Okay, good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Mad River Valley Planning District. The date today is February 19th, 2026. Calling the meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. The second item on the agenda are adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 3, introductions.
Yeah, so the purpose of introductions, Freddie joined the Plain District. Freddie started a week ago Monday, so just a bit over a week and a half in. I guess closing in on 2 weeks. And I had an opportunity to do a round of introductions of many of you have met her, but not everybody has. So having that opportunity to introduce yourself as well as what organization or entity that you might be affiliated with, and give Franny a few moments to introduce herself. So we'll start with Paul.
Yeah, before we began the meeting, I said hello, but formally I am Formally. I am on the Facein Planning Commission. So I am the liaison from the Facein Planning Commission to the steering committee. I've been on the planning commission for a couple of years now, and a background in law, criminal law, and then a couple of years of doing real estate law here in the Valley. So that's how I got involved in this.
Wonderful.
And we've also met. I'm Chuck Martell, Facein Select Board, and I've been on the Select Board for about 9 years now. Prior to that, I was on the Development Review Board. I was on the Planning Commission way back when. So I've had some time spent working with the town. Retired now, formerly in telecommunications business for 30 some odd years. So that's my background.
Wonderful.
Joel Rhodes, Planning and Sustainability Manager at Sugarbush. I've been at Sugarbush since 2018, and I also live here in Waitsfield.
Cool.
Dan Raddock, we met during the interview process. Chair of the Warren PC, although this is my last year, stepping down after 16 years. Although I'm hoping to stay involved in, fingers crossed, we have an affordable housing project that may get going, so I'm hoping to stay involved in that.
Awesome.
Jonathan?
I'm Jonathan Ersprung. I'm on the chair of the Waitsfield Planning Commission, and sort of actually spent a few years on the DRB in Waitsfield as well. Sort of how I get in here professionally. Also, like many others, a lawyer here in the Valley. So.
Oh yeah, I forgot to I'm a lawyer.
Oh, by the way,
I'm not a lawyer.
I am not a lawyer.
Congratulations to all of them.
I'm a recovering zoning administrator.
I am also not a lawyer, to be clear. I grew up in Vermont in the Upper Valley, little town called West Newbury. I went to UVM and got a bachelor's in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. I loved it so much, I went back and got a master's degree in natural resources, where the research that I did for that degree focused on the Facebook communications of federal agencies like the Park Service, Forest Service, and Fish and Wildlife. After grad school, I taught a couple classes at UVM, environmental interpretation, ecotourism. And after that, I did some marketing and development for a couple different nonprofits in the state. 2 very different ones, to be honest. One area agency on aging called AgeWell, in the northwestern quadrant of the state. And then most recently, the Vermont Center for Eco Studies in the Upper Valley. And now I'm here. I've taken a lot of classes on planning. I've wanted to have a job like this for a really long time, to be completely honest, and I'm really, really excited to be here. Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, that took less than 10 minutes. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Joshua?
No, I mean, just we've in the last week plus, it's been a lot of onboarding, communicate, like a lot of discussions, a lot of sort of context setting, going through the work plan, talking about some history, talking about organizations and relationships, and really sort of setting the foundation for the work that we do, as well as well, a lot of work on the, in particular on the data report, which is coming. That Franny's really been focused on, which is super exciting. So sort of jumping right into that work. But also not trying to go too fast, too far, too quick and too many different directions. But yeah, a couple meetings with partner organizations and setting the stage. So we have yet to really spend any time out of the office. And at some point we'll be going around and doing a tour and meeting with our different partners and setting up times to, stop in and talk to the town administrators and do a little bit more on the ground sort of geography work. So it's been really, really fun and exciting and great. So yeah, hitting the ground running.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Franny.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. I don't see any members of the public here or on the screen, so we'll move to acceptance of the minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes from January 15th, 2026?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I think we have a motion second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Hearing none. The minutes are accepted. Sixth item on the agenda is the staff report. Joshua, please.
All right, so I just shared a little bit of what's been taking the days the last 2 weeks, but a handful of things in the staff report that I think are worth the time highlighting. When it comes to the Waitsfield Community Wastewater Project, the project engineers produced 80% design set at the end of January. This D80 design set covers the wastewater treatment facility as well as the broader collection system. The initial review of those plans have already taken place by DEC staff, which is really exciting. Historically, the review time with DEC has not been anything like this. In fact, there's times where design sets took months and sometimes close to 6 months for review. And we've already received feedback and meetings with DEC staff within a week of the time that the plans were set. So kudos to DEC for staffing and supporting this particular project, but all their projects are moving forward because the review is a big piece of the puzzle. There was a 30% design, a 60% design. We're now essentially there's usually a 90% submittal, but we felt it was important because there's been so much development, and we're trying to really fast track to meet a completion in this spring, late spring, to get more feedback. And so the communication with DEC staff on the project has been really fantastic lately. And so it is targeting a design completion by spring 2026 with final permitting to follow. And that's another part of what's happening. These plans are being sent to all the different permitting agencies, getting their sort of initial early review and any feedback to be incorporated to expedite, when we get to the end of the design.
Quick, maybe spurious question.
Yeah.
Why does the Division of Historic Preservation get involved with a wastewater project?
Because there's things that happen.
Preserve like septic tanks or something like
that. Because there is federal and state money being used to dig in the ground. So every place where the pipe goes needs to identify if there's any impact. So there's actually been essentially three archaeology and historic resources surveys that were required as part of the project. And most of that has been in the right of way, which is where the pipe goes, but there's also connection to every house. So every single home that has a connection, there are requirements to ensure that we're not meeting state identified historic structures. So it is a very intense project because there are lots of connections with lots of homes. And also as we get to final design, part of this stage of the project, as the design has moved along, there's some outstanding questions about connections to homes. And so JB Weir is serving the zoning administrator for Waitsfield, who's on the wastewater team. He has been meeting with every identified priority parcel owner in the system to double check to make sure that they do want to sign on, as well as identifying and measuring where the wastewater pipe comes out of their building. Because if it comes out the back of the building, then the pipe needs to go around the building, and that could have impact on historic and other considerations, as well as somebody's future use of their land and potential sort of expansion or other things. So he's literally going into basements and measuring the height so that the engineer has that information that they can put into their final design. So
Wow.
it's serving as a tremendous opportunity to reconnect with property owners, to give them the update where we are. Again, in 2024, every priority parcel owner there was outreach, and about 90% signed a non-binding agreement saying that they were interested in the wastewater project and signing on. Now that we're essentially 2 years later, are double checking and meeting with folks to ensure that that's still the case, and to provide updates of the sort of implications and opportunities of signing on. So
What's the difference? What's the definition of a priority property owner?
yeah, so a priority parcel in the wastewater system is a property that essentially has an existing system that has public or environmental impacts or considerations. So properties who have existing leach fields that are 40 years or older, essentially at the end of their useful life. Second, septic fields that are located within a floodplain and or located within a river corridor, as well as systems that currently overlap with an existing well shield, as well as systems that do not have that are on properties that don't have room for a replacement system. Because traditional systems need to be replaced every period of time. And so those are identified. There are approximately 70 to 80 properties that were identified through that analysis. And those are the ones that we centered because the priorities of the project, first and foremost, most were health and safety issues. Those properties make up approximately 2/3 of the available capacity for the wastewater system. So there's another third or so, likely more, that will be available for additional expansions, housing, other priorities that the select board will be reviewing and getting into that work pretty soon as they build their ordinance. It's an exceptionally complicated project.
You're blowing my mind.
And an exceptionally important project.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges or one of the fun parts, depending how you want to look at it, is dialing in final construction funding. The project has received approximately $5.5 million to date in grants for funding. The intention of the funding stack initially was overwhelmingly grants with a small amount of loans, and with those loans to be paid back through user fees at an affordable rate. The changing federal funding landscape has changed this dynamic. And so as of now, there's a larger loan portion than grants. I've been working since August to set up a meeting with the Department of Environmental Conservation Commissioner, Misty Sensigali, and her staff to have a discussion about the funding and other opportunities. And that meeting happened a week ago today. And it was a really, really great meeting. They didn't give us bags of money. That did not happen. There are no magic bullets, but we were notified that there was a pending $1 million worth of the project that we didn't know before the meeting, that the project is eligible for. So it's a very positive development, and in mix with potential municipal funding. There's a local options tax that's on the ballot for Waitsfield at town meeting, and identifying and the possibility that revenue from the local options tax could also help pay down the debt for those loans going forward. So there's that piece of the puzzle is continuing to move, but to date, all of the project funding for the work to date has all been paid for through grants. and funding from the state and the feds, essentially the state, some of it was federal money through the state. And that's been incredible. And we have the project has a fairly large amount of grants for construction and keep on moving forward.
No. That's-
I wanted to highlight, there's the 802 Homes project under the housing section, as well as the Vermont Homes for All small scale development workshops. The Department of Housing and Community Development has been implementing a variety of programs and opportunities to both identify and fast track housing designs, as well as train would-be sorry, I'm sitting, my leg just lowered the chair as I was sitting here. I was like, what's happening? And one of those events, the Vermont Homes for All small scale development training opportunities, and development workshops. There's one starting this weekend, on the 21st. But there's a variety of really interesting information here. This workshop essentially teaches would-be developers and interested parties how to do development projects. And there's also, so that's a particular workshop, and there's a variety of other dates in other places around the state where that's happening. And there's also the Small Scale Developer Academy, which are a series of trainings on that same topic. So I printed these out. I think I might have sent some of that information via email in advance of this meeting, but it's great to see these programs and the role that Department of Housing Community Development is playing to sort of further the reach and knowledge and understanding of the process for development. And really focus on the developer side of the equation, in addition to the previous work that's been so focused on the sort of regulatory environment for housing. I want to highlight Franny's very first meeting last week was with the Mad River Path, who's starting a project to sort of build upon previous efforts that planning districts has led in understanding the socioeconomic recreation impacts in the Mad River Valley. Essentially, what is the economic and other and beyond economic impacts that recreation trails play in our community? And there's a few different tools that are available and work that the Plain District has done over time. We've been doing trail counts, some of that data is forthcoming. Trail counts since 2016 in collaboration with the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. And that serves as a good basis and a longitudinal study of recreation use, and is a key piece of the different types of information needed to plug into the models that estimate the economic impact of recreation. So we have pieces of that puzzle, and the Path Association has a committee that's focusing on that, and we had a great meeting last week. Looking forward to hear back from that group on their sort of strategy going forward, and we'll continue that dialogue with them. I was invited last week. I received an invitation really out of the blue to testify at House Transportation Committee to discuss Mad River Valley centric transportation challenges and successes. At first, I didn't understand why, but I was excited. I was like, yes, of course. But soon thereafter, Representative Candace White reached out to me and shared that the regional planning commissions have been. She's on that committee. The House Transportation Committee, and they have been had presentations by the regional planning commissions sharing about transportation challenges and projects, and sort of giving some input to the committee. And she said the Plain District should, you guys are connected to the towns, and there's transportation things happening all the time. So I've drafted a presentation. I've also reached out to individuals and staff, actually facing specifically Chuck, but town administrators in Warren and Waitsfield, to get any feedback on particular transportation related challenges. And I'm happy to talk about what I've put together. That meeting was supposed to be, it's still being scheduled. I was scheduled for a time, and then things got moved around. So that's what happens, committee meetings. So it'll likely happen right after town meeting day. So I'm looking forward to participating and sharing. Here's a project you may not be aware of, or I wasn't until somewhat recently, that Friends of the Mad River are undertaking a native tree nursery project. They received a really great grant through the Lake Champlain Basin Program to launch a local ecotype native tree nursery, essentially growing plants for plantings and again, native plants in particular. They actually they've hired a new staff member, Michelle, Michelle? Yes, who started the same day that Franny did. So there's new faces at the General Wade House, and I provide a letter of support for an additional grant application that they submitted just at the end of last week. And then the last two or so things I wanted to highlight. One, and not to steal too much thunder when we do a roundtable, but Waitsfield had an infrastructure summit this past week. I sent an email out earlier this week about that to discuss major needs and long-term investments that are shaping the future of the town, sort of what the infrastructure needs are in the community. The wastewater project, an update on that, as well as funding opportunities or opportunity, which is the local options tax, as a tool at the disposal to municipalities in the state of Vermont, assuming positive votes from the public. There were like 25 people or so at that event, and it was really, really great having select board, 4 different members of the select board and the town administrator share different pieces of the story in the information there. I got to forward the slides. I found out right as I walked in that was my job. But we're always here to help at the Madrid Valley Planning District, so we do whatever's needed. But it was really great to be able to be a part of that, and it seemed like a really great conversation. I really hope folks can watch the video or otherwise learn.
I think it should be available now, and if not soon, on
Great.
MRV TV.
Yeah, it does a great job of framing the conversation and providing understanding. And I learned a lot about the status of the town garage and bridges and other things that I didn't fully comprehend before, and the challenges that the town of Waitsville in particular, but really all municipalities are facing with these large infrastructure needs. And so the last thing I want to highlight under other is the Vermont 2025 year in GIS. I found this to be fascinating. So the state of Vermont's essentially mapping unit and GIS team, the Vermont Center for Geographic Systems, is that the name? Yes. VCGI put together a list of 40 different examples of the type of mapping work that they're doing in the state, and it's fascinating. And things from 9/11, 911, E911, flood-prone properties, Act 250 jurisdiction projects, a variety of different things. And I learned a lot by piecing through that. And I think that they did a great job of showcasing their work and the ways in which that they're supporting state agencies and regional partners across Vermont. So those are all the things I wanted to highlight. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joshua. Does anyone have any questions?
Just a comment, that website's cool. I played with it today.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
GIS one.
Yeah.
Okay, if we have no questions, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is new business. There are 3 items under new business. The first is the 2026 annual data report.
Excellent. And we're gonna
Share.
yes.
on my screen.
So if you can, I will make sure you have the ability to share your screen. Yes. So now you should be able to.
No,
So you can share, is your PowerPoint open?
it is open. I don't
Yeah,
usually
it shows it.
That's a good
You can just do.
Jonathan, how are things at your house?
Good, good. I can hear the little nursery music box going, so all good there.
Congratulations, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Definitely, congratulations.
Don't hear any screaming at the moment, but I'm sure it'll come back.
Are you guys getting any sleep?
Yeah, we're lucky enough to have lots of family around right now, so we're we're able to get a couple hours here and there when my mother or Larissa's father takes over.
Nice.
So, thank you, Jonathan. Glad things are going well. I'm gonna provide a little really quick context. So Matter Valley, it's actually 2025 annual data report, which was just completed at the end of this past year. The annual data report was established by the Matter Valley Planning District's Memorandum of Understanding, the 1998 version of the MOU. Identifies a handful of, is very specific and specific data to be collected, analyzed and shared through the Matter Valley Planning District. Over time, that list of things that are in the 1998 MOU, those particular data points have evolved through conversation and decision of the steering committee. And when I started in 2008, there was an effort to sort of revamp the data collection effort. And Center for Rural Studies at the University of Vermont was hired to help us ensure that we were measuring the things we wanted to measure. Are there other data sources and ways in which we could meet the goals of what was laid out in the MOU? And under my direction and interest, evolve the data collection and sharing effort from being really, as it was created, centric around Sugarbush to be something that was broader and more like a Matter Valley Almanac. And so that's been the sort of evolution of the data report. One additional piece that's more recent is the Matter Valley Community Dashboard. And that is a couple different things, but it is one of the places in which this data is uploaded and made available for consumption and analysis by the community. So this data that's about to be shared is collected, analyzed, and produced by Sam Robinson prior to his departure at the end of last year. And the report itself, the digital version, we have paper versions here, which I'll be passing out at the end, because we don't want you jumping ahead quite yet, even though it is on the website. But it is on our website as well. Forthcoming, we anticipate soon we'll be incorporating this data into that Matter Valley Community Dashboard. That work has yet to happen, as well as individual town presentations, which is something we want to talk about, or partner presentations at the end of this meeting and get some feedback. So Franny started on the 9th of February, a week ago Monday, and I had this crazy idea of, hey, Franny, do you want to read, understand, and present the data to the Planning District Steering Committee in about a week? And she was like, sure, yeah, I'm up for it. And beyond it just being a task of something to lean into, I thought it was a really great way to be an introduction to the Valley. As an introduction and really starting with the base data, right? I mean, one of the goals of the planning district is to ensure that our community can make data-informed decisions. And so understanding the data is a key piece of that and is foundational. So she's been familiarizing herself with the report and really recognizing that Franny brings a fresh perspective. I asked her to, as you look through it, what's the story that you see? You have a perspective that's different than mine. And what's the story that this data provides? And so it's been fast and furious in the last week or so, and it's been a basis for some really great office conversations and questions and other things. So the goal of this presentation is a few different things. One, share the 2025 findings with you all. Second, this is essentially the first draft of a presentation to be shared with the towns. It's probably longer. It's probably not quite dialed in yet, but we wanted to invite the steering committee to be a part of the essentially create a dialogue and be part of refining the work of presenting this data to the community. So your feedback is really appreciated. I want to note that this presentation is a subset of what's in the 2025 data report. I'm probably stealing some of your thunder.
No.
But the data report itself is over 90 pages and a similar number of graphs and charts. You'd be here a much longer period of time if all of that was shared. So this is just a subset. So it's really a highlight, and there's much more available for your own exploration. But we want to continue. In addition to the amount of time we have allotted here, we're both interested in continuing the conversation. So like out beyond this meeting, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense of what you've learned. What additional questions come up for you? What additional data could be added for future iterations of the data report? Any causation or questions of connection? So keep those things in mind. We'll have some discussion, I anticipate, at the end, but more than happy to continue the dialogue. So, and at the end, we'll hand out the actual paper version of the data report. So that's the context. Welcome, Franny, for your first presentation.
Thank you. And thank
Jump
you
right in.
for that introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. Also really appreciate that. And let's get into it. So to set the stage, I'd like to talk a little bit about age and population. About 4,600 to a little over 5,000 people live here in the Valley. That's sort of comparing both the census data and the American Community Survey data. The census is, of course, a little bit more accurate. The American Community Survey uses sampling, so it's a little bit less accurate, but it happens more frequently. And so what do these numbers mean? We think it likely means that there's long-term growth in the Valley over time. The population has climbed to about 5,000. But with this American Community Survey data, there might be some short-term fluctuation of a couple hundred people year to year. Average age in the Valley has increased. And as I'm sure many of you know, school enrollment in the Valley and at the county level and state level has decreased. So let's take a look at some of these graphs. There it is. So the first graph I'd like to look at is the median age for Mad River Valley towns. The red represents Fayston, blue represents Waitsfield, or that darker blue represents Waitsfield, and the goldeny yellow represents Warren, light blue represents Vermont as a whole, and the lime green color is the US trend. What I think is really compelling about this is in the 90s, the average age in the Valley hovered around 30, a little bit more, and it's crawled up to 50 as of 2020. And so in the Valley, we're trending older, not only than Vermont, but as older than the country as a whole. And I also want to say, I probably should have said this at the beginning, if at any point you want to interrupt me and ask a question or you have a statement, I would love to hear it. I'd love to think of this as a conversation. But if you want to hold your questions to the end, that's fine too. But I want to invite you at any point, if you'd like to say something, please don't pull back.
Just a clarification, when was the 2020 number measured? Do you know when?
2020.
In the year? Yeah,
I believe that.
Yeah, so
related to COVID.
yeah, it's a weird year for
Yeah.
collection. It was happening during COVID, both before and after. And there's also some particular challenges with that data, both what was happening with the federal administration at the time, in questions about data validity, but there was also anecdotally a variety of stories of individuals who had to essentially move to different locations in April and May and fill out the survey, and it said, where do you live?
Yep.
And so where you live might be different in that context in 2 months or 3 months prior, as well as 12 months later.
Yeah, we lived in Newbury, Vermont, because of the census.
Yeah, so
And came here in a couple months. later.
yeah. So there's like a little asterisk for 2020 census data, and that's part of the context for
That's
it.
great, thanks.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But it does very much continue the trend of the previous decennial census dates.
Absolutely. I'm going to move on to the next one as long as everybody's okay with that. So now let's take a look at a population pyramid. I think this also speaks to the point, or I guess maybe before I start interpreting it, I should probably explain this figure. So on the y-axis, you have age, and on the x-axis, you have population coefficients. The green represents Vermont as a whole, the blue represents the Mad River Valley. That pink outline that you see kind of encircling the green represents where the population in Vermont stood at 2000. The green represents 2020. And similarly, on the Mad River Valley side, the blue represents 2020 and that goldy color represents 2000. So I really like this figure. I think it kind of says a lot in a sort of concise wrapped up package. You can really see kind of how the population has changed in the past 20 years, where maybe certain age groups have grown or decreased. And it's really interesting, in my opinion.
Part of the problem.
Yes.
Well, you didn't have to. Yes.
Yes.
What, you have a solution?
No, I don't. No, but- No.
You're not, that's not helpful.
Getting right into it. Well, no, but I am a young person from Vermont and I really want to stay here. So this is something that I'm particularly interested in. But yes, anyway, it is an issue, I think, and I think this graph shows it. So moving on to school enrollment, you'll see comparative index enrollment on that y-axis and time or school years on the x-axis. The gold represents Harwood Unified Union School District. I might have flipped the Unified Union. I hope you forgive me. The darker blue, purpley color is Washington County, and Vermont is the lighter blue. And you can see there was sort of a disparity growing between Washington County and Vermont and the Harwood Union School District kind of emerging in the 2016, 2017. What I think is really interesting about this graph is they're all coming back together now. And so where Harwood might have been trailing behind the state and the county for a little bit of time, the trends have now really sort of come together. So to get into specifics, school enrollment since the 2020 or 2011, 2012 has decreased by 13% in the Mad River Valley. And I have some more specific numbers down at the bottom there. And I think it's important to point out that the enrollment has decreased most dramatically at the high school level, but of course that's where all the elementary schools and middle schools are filtering in. But yeah, school enrollment is decreasing. So switching gears a little bit, I'd like to talk about housing now. So these are sort of broad overview trends, and like we did with the age and population, I'm going to break it down as we go. But overview, sales of primary and vacation homes have decreased since 2020, but the price of both of primary and vacation homes has increased. The number of active short-term whole house rental units has also increased. So Airbnbs, Verbos, things of that nature. The number of Sugarbush employees living in the valley has also increased. Rent in Waitsfield is in line with county and state trends, but rent in Warren has recently increased. There's a little bit more to it than saying it so plainly, but for the point of this slide, that's the recent trend. Grand lists, on the other hand, have experienced very little fluctuation in the past 20 years. So let's look at the graphs. Here we have number of primary residents sold in the Mad River Valley. The lighter color down at the bottom of the graph there along the x-axis represents Waitsfield. The slightly darker blue color is Fayston, and the darkest blue is Warren. And this is a stacked graph, so each value is stacked on top of each other, obviously by the phrase stacked graph. On the y-axis, you have number of homes sold, and then on the x-axis, as I mentioned, is time passing. And so in between 2011 and 2019, there was a pretty significant increase of 115%. But between 2020 and 2024, annual home sales or primary residence sales actually decreased by 53%. What I'm particularly interested in is seeing that little upturn, particularly in Warren at the very edge of the graph there. I'm really interested to see how that number changes as we approach 2030. If we reach another boom, like what happened in COVID, or if things maybe stabilize or go down again, I think it's going to be interesting to watch that graph change. Looking at price, this is kind of similar graph on the y-axis, you have price of home. On the X-axis U of time, and this is primary resident sales. I don't know if I mentioned that already. Dark blue is Waitsfield, red is Facein, the goldy color is Warren, and the checkered purpley line is Washington County as a whole. And you'll see that everything is going up, most significantly in Warren, least significantly in Waitsfield, but again, 50% is pretty, that's a considerable number, but in line with Vermont and the county. So transitioning to vacation homes, this is a similar graph as this one that we just looked at for primary residences. So similar graph for vacation homes. Again, the really light shade is Waitsfield, the slightly darker blue is Facein, and the darkest blue is Warren. You can see that between 2012 and 2020, really big increase in vacation home sales, and the market has since cooled off a little bit. Most of those vacation homes, no secret, you can tell plain as day looking at the graph, it's happening in Warren. Transitioning to talk about vacation home sale price, these are also on the rise. Facein has in particular shot up pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
And looking at that number down at the bottom, between 2016 and 2024, the median sale price for vacation homes in Facein has increased by almost 300%, which is pretty wild.
Can I ask a maybe dumb question? How do you tell if something's a vacation home?
Yeah,
or
the
primary?
definition of vacation.
Like,
That's
is there a
interesting.
registered voter in there or?
That's an excellent question that I
So,
have to-
so whether it's identified as a homestead or not by, so,
Oh, tax.
yeah,
Yeah.
Department of Health's data.
It's actually, if memory serves, it's on the forms that you sign at closing, the transaction.
Okay, so there's a primary checklist.
Yeah.
Maybe different than homestead, actually.
Yes, actually, you are correct. Thank you, Jonathan.
A question on this graph, about sales price and how that's calculated, is that just the number of homes sold and the total value of those homes sold? So you could have a couple of really big sales that would spike that.
Yeah, actually, if you
Wrap
don't
up.
mind going back just one slide,
course.
you can sort of see the largest chunk in the most recent year is in Warren. And smaller, in this kind of even, but smaller amounts in Facein in Waitsfield. And if you go forward, you can see where the larger the largest change is happening
Is it
in
this one?
places that have lower numbers. And Warren's number is probably a little insulated a little bit by those types of situations.
Want a few more moments with this
I'll do
one? Okay, wonderful. So putting this into context a little bit, if you look at the statewide trends compared to the Mad River Valley, you have total homes sold on the left side of your screen that relates, or sorry, the left side axis where it says total homes Mad River Valley, that represents the total number of homes sold in the Mad River Valley, and that corresponds to that darker greeny blue line. On the other side, you'll see total homes sold in Vermont, and that corresponds to the gold line. And you can tell that the trend here, number of primary residents sold in the Mad River Valley, really mirrors the pattern that's seen at the statewide level, almost remarkably. Of course, the statewide line is a little bit more smooth, and that of course corresponds to the fact that more homes are being sold at the statewide level than in the Mad River Valley, but it's pretty remarkable to see how similar the selling trends are at the regional level and the state level. And it's especially interesting when you compare it to the number of vacation homes sold. So same type of graph, on the left side of the left axis over there, you'll see the total homes sold in Mad River Valley. That corresponds to the greeny bluey line. And then on the other side, total homes sold in Vermont, that corresponds to the gold line. And the total vacation homes sold, that line is showing much more volatility or change over time, and it does not necessarily follow the pattern at the state level, which is quite interesting in my opinion. Transitioning to a slightly different topic, looking at primary residence loss versus gain. So how much of the housing stock is transitioning out of residential, moving more towards a vacation home type of situation. On the y-axis, you'll see number of homes that are being transformed in this way. Sorry, I think I got that backwards, but x-axis is at the time, of course. And if you look at that bold sentence along the bottom, between 2012 and 2022, residential losses increased by 245%. That's pretty significant. Of course, what those numbers actually look like, it means you went from losing 11 homes that are, residential to 38. That's not, a crazy number, but it's still, 11 homes versus 38 homes. It's an increase. And of course, that increase continued through 2024, where residential losses totaled 185, gains totaled 104, which means a net loss of over 80 long-term housing units. And on a similar note, I'd just like to point out that vacation homes and vacant units make up 46% of the Mad River Valley's housing stock. I'm going to come back to a number like that in a couple slides, but just keep in mind 46% of our housing stock are either vacation units or vacant. Transitioning a little bit again, let's talk about short-term rentals. So this graph shows you sort of the activity around short-term rentals in the Mad River Valley. On the y-axis, you'll see whole home units, and on the x-axis, you'll see time. And I think this is a really interesting graph. It really shows the cyclical nature of short-term rentals here. So every dip that you sort of see represents maybe a time period where a lot of people aren't listing their residences on Vrbo or Airbnb. And that there's a sort of seasonality with the short-term rental market here. What I'd like to point out is in 2018, number was hovering around 400. Today, it's really much closer to 600, and that's a pretty significant increase in a short period of time.
Looking at the downward spikes around New Year's every year, it seems like some of these might be, out of state owned, and then they rent them the rest of the year. So.
Definitely, and I think one positive thing, or maybe not saying that this is totally negative or totally positive, it just is. One thing that I learned this week is that short-term rentals, they do actually contribute to the rooms and meals tax. And so, increasing number of short-term rentals, but increased number of rooms and meals tax without an additional lodging facility being built. Transitioning again to talk about a number of Sugarbush employees residing in the Mad River Valley, relatively stable with some fluctuation over time. On the y-axis, you'll see percentage, x-axis, you'll see time again. Typically, this number of Sugarbush employees living in the valley hovers right around 50%, give or take a couple percentage points. What's interesting about this year, you'll see the red line, which represents year-round employees, and the blue line, which represents seasonal employees, crossing. And so for the first time in a really long time, more seasonal employees lived in the Mad River Valley than year-round employees in the last ski season. And another really—
Does that make sense, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Another really exciting thing.
Nice
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, awesome job. Other exciting
We're
thing.
losing lodging facilities for workforce housing, but they're here.
For now.
Yeah. For now.
One thing I wanted to share, Tenants for Turns, a program developed by the planning district, has rebounded since COVID, where it maybe fell off for a year or two, but they this year secured housing for 33 employees, or I guess I should say last ski season. They secured housing for 33 employees, so that's really awesome. Switching gears a little bit again, I'd like to talk about median gross rent by region. So a couple slides ago, I mentioned that 46% of our housing stock is made up of vacation homes or vacant units. Just to give a little context there, maybe provide a little bit more information, 11% of our housing stock is represented by rental units.
Long-term rental units.
Long-term rental units, not short-term rental units. Thanks for that clarification. So this shows gross rent over time versus 2024 fair market housing rates. You'll see the green line represents 1-bedroom fair market housing rate. Blue line represents 2-bedroom, red line represents 3. And of course, you'll see the 2024 rent price, 2018 rent price, and 2023 rent prices for the three towns in Washington County represented there as well. Waitsfield, pretty consistent, was right in line with Washington County for the most part. Warren used to be significantly below that fair market housing rate in the past couple of times this data was collected, but recently shot up. Facein's always been expensive, the looks of it, at least from this view. But I think helpful to look at this graph when thinking about rent prices for the valley. Next, I'd like to look at grand lists. As I mentioned, there's been really minimal fluctuations over the past 20 years. It's been relatively consistent. Over this time period, Waitsfield and Warren increased by 1%, whereas Facein decreased by 1%. What I'd like to point out is all three reached a common level of appraisal of 80% or lower in 2022, and this decline continued in 2024, which means a mandatory townwide reappraisal is triggered, which happens at the 80% level. So that's coming.
We're scheduled for 2029.
Wonderful.
Please continue. So, here.
So switching gears from housing, I'd like to talk about economics a little bit. Looking at meals, rooms, and alcohol receipts, we've shown strong recovery from COVID, especially in the town of Waitsfield. What's really exciting for us, not so much for Montpelier, is that our meals, rooms, and alcohol receipts outpace Montpelier's, and they have for quite a while. And we're right in line with Waterbury, which I also think is quite exciting. Retail receipts have been quite steady for the past 20 years. There's been a slight 1% decrease overall. 2024-2025 ski season was an above average year for snowfall and skier visits. Trail use is still decreasing from the 2020 surge, but we have data to support that we're starting to trend towards stabilization, which is great.
So Montpelier used to outpace the valley?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, Montpelier and Waterbury, but we overtook them in 2019 and have maintained that ever since. So looking at the town by town breakdown of meals, rooms, and alcohol tax receipts, you might be wondering what the heck's going on with Facein. And
I think we know.
yeah. Not enough businesses and Facein to consistently report on, but I think it's still an interesting graph to sort of get an idea of what's happening.
What happened? 2015, so exciting. Multiple businesses.
So this data, meals, rooms, and alcohol tax receipts data, there needs to be a certain number of businesses in order to, for the, within each category, for the state to report that data out, because they want to make it anonymous on who they are, those businesses. So I think the number is something like 7 or 8 number of businesses within the category. And there were apparently that number was triggered in both 2008 and 2015. But for the most part, that hasn't been the case. And it also could exist. If you notice on the left-hand side, those older dates, it's a little bit above 0, and on the right, it goes all the way to 0, which also means there's meals, rooms, and alcohol tax receipt data. Those are a few different categories, and one of those areas, there could have been some information with the other categories, with no information.
I just thought General Sparks Pub crushed it.
It could have been.
The madhouse.
The comparisons to Montpelier, I find, since I work there, Montpelier's really suffered
Yeah.
between the floods and I think the return to office policy is partially to try to drive, state employees back there buying things.
Absolutely.
That is a suffering city.
I read a statistic or a statement a few months ago that said something like 7,000 people enter Montpelier prior to COVID every single day. When you think about it, that's a lot of people. It's like over the population of people that live in this area.
Yeah.
Right, and for 5 years, they haven't been going there.
Right.
Right.
So I'm actually going to skip ahead to talk about this slide where we can see these trends. So the dark green, sorry.
Is it boom?
Yeah, boom. Dark green represents Montpelier. You can see outpacing Waterbury and the Valley up until 2019, where the Valley suddenly overtakes it, and then everybody drops off at 2020. Lime green is representing Waterbury, and the gold is Warren and Waitsfield. Again, as we just discussed, Facein did not have enough, or for the reason that we talked about, can't report on Facein. But Warren and Waitsfield, that's a pretty positive picture for the Mad River Valley. So like I said, Mad River Valley, rooms, meals, and alcohol tax surpassed Montpelier in 2019, 2022, 2023, as you mentioned, when we think about the COVID return to office or lack thereof in that time period, the Montpelier floods that really impacted that city, didn't impact the Mad River Valley as much. But things could change. 2023 to 2024, Montpelier's meals, rooms, and alcohol tax receipts increased by 10%, where the Mad River Valley remains stable. So this is another graph. I'm really interested to see what happens come 2030. I know this was, I was excited about this slide. Are we okay to move on? Okay, great. So moving on to retail, I mentioned earlier, it's been relatively steady in the past 20 years. On the y-axis, you'll see the amount of money earned in time on the x-axis. I'm sorry if I keep conflating those. I might keep this straight. Thank you. But
these are real dollars. This is not, not accounting, so it's not really flat.
well, this is adjusted for inflation.
It is adjusted from,
Yes,
okay,
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
No, that's okay. Josh
you.
immediately
Sorry.
had the same statement.
I was like, we need to double check. We need to clarify that it's just for inflation because it's important to, because if it wasn't just for inflation,
Right.
that's a really,
That's a sad
difficult-
story.
yes.
Are they adjusting for inflation with their numbers, or are we doing it on our?
I believe they are.
Yeah.
I believe they are.
Yeah,
Are they using like Northeast CPI or?
I don't recollect.
I can bother you later.
Yeah,
So thinking about retail, there's been a 4% increase in 2018, and that is accounting for the 8% dip in 2020, 5% increase between 2023 and 2024. So all things considered, a relatively happy picture for retail in the Valley.
Don't tell them that.
Okay. Okay, looking at skier visits for the Valley, 2024-2025 ski season, slightly above average snowfall and skier visits compared to the last season. What's kind of interesting here is Sugarbush actually saw a decrease in total skier visits, where Mad River Glen experienced a 12% increase in total skier visits.
so really slightly above average. The 24-25 ski season combined is a little bit lower than the previous year.
So I might have gotten that wrong, and I will take full
Yeah,
credit for that.
I'm writing down the note.
Okay, great. We'll review that.
Yes.
Sorry
Well,
about
it's not right.
Well, just if you look at 23-24 versus 24-25, the combined skier visits for Mad River Glen and Sugarbush is actually lower than the previous year.
right, and I said increase.
yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, Mad River Glen has increased over that time.
Right,
That is really-
yeah. So maybe ignore the text at the bottom of that slide and only look at the graph. and
Well, we're
we'll-
assuming the placement of the bars is right.
I believe so.
Yes.
I'm gonna trust Sam
I'm gonna-
over myself on that one.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I'll take
we
a
know.
report on the data, yeah.
All right, so moving to trail count, we were talking a little bit about this earlier. So through a partnership with Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, we do a bi-yearly trail count between August and October. I'm sure you all know August and October can have a whole slew of weather changes, from being very rainy to very hot and sunny, and that can really impact the way that people are moving on trails or lack thereof. There's definitely a decrease in trail use since the boom in 2020. You can really see that boom on the Blueberry Lake trails in that first little section there. And I guess I probably should have walked through this slide a little bit more. Trail users is on the y-axis, and the trails, of course, are on the x-axis. Blueberry Lake Trails is the first one that you'll see. Going from left to right, Revolution at Flatbread, the Heart of the Valley Trail, Waitsfield Village Sidewalk, Chase Brook, West Greenway, Kingsbury Greenway, Millbrook Trail, and Warren Path. I believe the last four that you see only have partial data, as in they weren't collected as frequently as the others, or they started data collection happened differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 2016, those were the first locations that were collected, and then we've continued the collection of those locations and added a few at different times.
Something that's really interesting to me about this figure is that there isn't really, you can't just say that people aren't visiting the more remote or backcountry trails like Blueberry Lake or Chase Brook and favoring these in-town trails or in-town sidewalks. There's really fluctuation all over the map here, and which I think is interesting and supports that there are fluctuations, but we're trending towards stabilization, and that these remote or backcountry trails aren't necessarily decreasing entirely now that people have less time to recreate outside. So moving from economics to employment, employment trends higher than the state and the country here in the Mad River Valley. Sectors with the greatest number of businesses include professional, business services, construction, and leisure and hospitality. As I'm sure you can imagine, the dominant employers are within those same three industries. Jumping back, we were talking a little bit about fair market rent prices and what that looks like in this place. And according to our data, only 3 industries maintained an average annual wage sufficient to rent a 3-bedroom based on the fair market housing values in Washington County. On the flip side of that, 3 industries consistently reported wages lower than both the 1-bedroom and the 3-bedroom fair market housing rates for Washington County. Because we're talking about employment, I felt it was only fair to also talk about unemployment. And unemployment trends in the Mad River Valley really just mirror those of the state and are relatively low and relatively stable. So comparing employment to Vermont as a whole in Washington County, you have indexed employment on the y-axis there, and like many of our other graphs, time on the x-axis. So you can see, it's pretty exciting. Mad River Valley has surpassed the state and county in employment for a long time. There was a drop in employment here, maybe a little bit more dramatic of a drop than looking at Washington County and the state as a whole. But we also know that there's major leisure and hospitality employers here that were obviously hit quite hard during COVID. One thing that I want to keep my eye on, or something that I'm curious about, is that dip in 2020. There was an 8% drop in employment between 2023 and 2024. And so I think it'll be interesting to keep our eye on that, especially as the county and state aren't dropping at that same rate. So it'll be interesting, again, as we approach 2030 to see kind of what happens there. Looking at number of jobs by industry, again, you'll see a really, really big stack there in leisure and hospitality. Retail trade also has kind of a considerable blip, along with professional business services and construction. I'd like to point out that pre-pandemic, we were sitting at around 2,500 to 2,700 jobs. And we're getting close to that again. There's been a 9% increase, or there was a 9% increase in employment between 2020 and 2023. But again, as I mentioned, 8% drop in 2024. You might notice like what's going on the right side of that graph with the C and the asterisks. And it's again kind of a confidentiality reporting standards thing. In 2020, Warren unfortunately no longer met the state's confidentiality reporting standards specifically for the hospitality sector. So
there weren't enough number of businesses.
Right. And so you can see in that dark purple, so the dark purple represents the data from 2024 on that leisure and hospitality chunk is now there. Yeah.
So all the confidential industries go into
Yeah.
a confidential
So
group bucket.
correct.
Got it.
So hospitality is one of those. There's likely others. I would imagine the vast majority, when you're talking about number of jobs, is within that hospitality side. But yeah.
So again, I mentioned that several industries consistently make over the fair market housing wage for a 3-bedroom in Washington County, and several industries consistently make lower than even the 1-bedroom fair market housing wage. Looking at this graph, I'm so sorry, the colors are so obnoxious in the data report. I promise they're better, just I couldn't get them to behave for this presentation, so I appreciate your understanding on that one. But the orange dotted line represents the 3-bedroom housing wage. The blue dotted line represents the 1-bedroom housing wage. The y-axis represents salary on the bottom. The x-axis represents your industries. 3 industries that consistently maintain an average annual wage sufficient to rent a 3-bedroom housing: the information, professional business services, and wholesale trade. 3 industries that are consistently lower than either the 1-bedroom or the 3-bedroom fair market housing wage are agriculture, retail trade, and hospitality. And there's others that hug those lines as well. And you can clearly see that on this graph. If you look at education, health services, they're right there at that 1-bedroom line.
Okay, that's what, is this single employee wage?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe
Yeah,
so.
yeah, so this is NAICS data, and that is my understanding that it's single, I'm gonna double check that. These questions, by the way, are really great because like, please do not hesitate to ask those types of clarifying questions because we want to be able to research these things. Because if you're asking it, somebody else will ask it and we'll be better prepared for when those happen.
Definitely, so please don't hold back.
I know I've asked this one before, but I don't remember what the answer was. Education is listed twice. One is in a separate category, education services, and then there's education and health services. I'm sure someone explained that to me once. I don't understand why education is listed twice.
Right, yeah, well, specifically, it's an overarching NAICS code with a definition of what those are, but I don't know what those are, so that is a great thing to look into.
Definitely. Right, I'm gonna move on from this one. So like I said, we've been talking about employment for a few minutes. It feels fair to talk about unemployment. Unemployment percentage is on the y-axis. Time, like many of these graphs, is on the x-axis. Facein is represented in red, Waitsfield in the darker blue, and Warren in gold. Washington County is the purple checkered line, and Vermont as a whole is the light blue checkered line. And as you can see, employment trends in the Mad River Valley really mirror that of Vermont. There was a heightened spike in Facein, especially in 2020, but pretty much everywhere in 2020. And you can see towards the right edge of that graph that we'll probably want to keep an eye on unemployment. It looks like it might be headed up again a little bit, but overall relatively low and hopefully headed towards stabilization. Another trend that I'd really like to highlight is the heightened need for community services at the local level. In the past 10 or so years, we've seen increased visits to the food shelf, more funds dispersed by the Mad River Valley Interfaith Council. We've seen an increase in emergency service calls, thankfully relatively stable crime levels, and increased bus ridership, which I'm really psyched about. As I mentioned, total Mad River Valley food shelf visits by year has increased. Obviously, there was sort of some activity right around 2020, but that's a pretty direct line upwards. Between 2020 and 2024, visits increased by 182%. And so what does that look like? It's over 1,500 people. But to put that, give it a little bit more context, I'm sure many of you are aware, EBT, food stamps, known formally in the state of Vermont as 3 squares, has been cut relatively recently. You'll see the number of benefits, or sorry, dollar amount in terms of benefits listed on the x-axis, or sorry, y-axis, time represented on the x-axis. Red checkered line represents average monthly recipients, blue solid line represents monthly benefits. And sort of some interesting activity happening right around between the 2018-2021 window, no surprise there, but a dramatic drop recently, kind of right around 2024. And so as we think about these food shelf, this isn't the whole picture, but it's certainly informed, or I have to imagine, or I maybe I should say, I should assume that the lack or maybe change in the dispersal of state benefits has some impact there.
And on the food shelf visits, is that unique visits per year, or is that like frequent visitors?
That's an excellent
It's
question.
individual visits.
Individual visits where someone comes and say, I need some help.
Well, I know that they keep track, that's how they
Yeah,
monitor it.
yeah, it's number of people through the door, so.
The number of people through the door. So then number of people through the door has increased by 1,500 people.
Which is pretty substantial, given the fact that the number, yeah, I mean, that, if you go back just one more. Back to that one, maybe it had been just a little bit below 2,000 and now, I mean, it's nearly doubled.
Yeah, I think one of the things, they're getting that number of, you know, how many people are going there on a weekly basis. It's shocking.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the number that would really stick with people.
Yeah. And, you know, with so many of the Lions kind of doing okay, the averages, right? That this estimated that there's a uptick in inequality, right? Yeah. Like. It's more struggling happening on the low end, even though it doesn't affect the average as much.
Absolutely. So this is a very colorful chart. This is emergency assistance dispersed by the Mad River Valley Interfaith Council. A lot of different things being represented here. The very dark blue is food. Red is housing, or in the form of emergency rent and mortgage is what those funds would be used for. Green is medical, purple is transportation, the lighter blue is utilities, the orange is tuition, and the super dark blue shade at the top is other. And in 2024, the Mad River Valley Interfaith Council dispersed nearly $20,000, which is 88% higher than 2023. But if you look at that graph, there's quite an obvious dip in 2023, quite an obvious peak around 2020, 2021, 2022. But main point of what I'm trying to say here is the amount of money dispersed in 2024 is 55% higher than the average for this time period, which is about $12,500. So an increase, this doesn't necessarily mean there's been an increased need. Maybe someone gave a donation and the Interfaith Council was able to disperse that money. But I think when you look at the rest of this information, like the 3 squares and food shelf visits, it paints a picture of growing need for community services in this region. Similar trend going on here, the number of calls to the Mad River Valley ambulance and fire departments has increased. Calls specifically to the ambulance department has increased by almost 30%. Fire department calls have increased by over 50%. Number of calls on this graph is represented on the y-axis, time again on the x-axis. And the point that I'd like to make with this slide is that total emergency service calls has increased by 36%.
Yeah.
Yep. I'd also like to talk about crime. It's relatively low and stable here in the valley, which I'm sure doesn't surprise anybody. Relatively large dip in 2018. Josh and I were talking about this earlier today, and that could honestly represent just a change in how data is collected. But I think it's interesting to keep this in mind. You know, even though we're not a small town of Vermont, but a collection of small towns in Vermont, crime still does happen. And it's, I think, important to keep an eye on things and be aware of the numbers, but thankfully low and stable. Now talking about bus ridership, this is technically something that's in the traffic and transit section, but it's still community service. Average annual bus ridership is back up. It's back up to 50,000 people a year. And average bus ridership doesn't necessarily correspond to skier visits. So what does this graph represent? You have annual bus passengers on the left side of the graph. And that is represented in the gold bars. On the right side of the graph, you have annual Sugarbush skier visits. And that's represented in that blue sort of dotted line. And you can see that to an extent, there's some correlation between bus ridership and skier visits. We of course know that some skiers do take advantage of the bus, but it's really not just skiers. Plenty of community members use it as well. 50,000 people to be exact. So that's really exciting to me. I'm excited to hopefully keep tracking this and see how bus ridership changes over time. But I think this is a really interesting graph. You know, not a lot of Vermont towns or regions have a bus, but we do, and people ride it.
Yeah, many years ago, there was this question, I bet when skier visits are high, the bus ridership is high. So a few years ago, we stacked these things on top of each other and, well, maybe not. So we thought it was important just to keep that information there.
Absolutely.
And I will say we just got quick word on this year's season and to date, as you look at those numbers, Joel, like
It's pretty close.
it's almost exactly the same numbers last year. Like I think it's the same numbers in a slightly different order than the last three, and my brain was like, how is this possible? But it's all, we're essentially on track. to
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah, but we're not on track for where we're hoping to be based on Sam's.
Correct. We were hoping to increase ridership this year,
Yeah.
due to some changes. So that's also interesting to sort of see that it's the same numbers last year in spite of the changes that were implemented.
Okay. So, traffic and transit, bottom half of the slide talks about the bus, and I've already talked about that. But what you should know is traffic in the Mad River Valley ebbs and flows year to year. Interestingly, average annual daily traffic for the Sugarbush Access Road is down 13%. Average annual daily traffic for Route 17 has increased by 24%. And as I've already mentioned, bus ridership is at 50K. And the actual total Mad Bus ridership rose an additional 25% between 2023 and 2024, which
I mean, somebody was counting on Route 17 and somebody was not counting on that.
no. Well, at least not by our data. I didn't mean to say no, so
No, but I mean-
yeah, strictly, but.
More people are skiing at Mad River.
We're going the other way, right?
So, as I was saying, Sugarbush Access Road average daily, traffic has dropped by 13%, same time period, traffic on Route 17 has increased. Yeah, not exactly what I was expecting either, to be honest with you, but.
That makes some sense to me, given there's been such big population growth in like the Chittenden County southeast, you know, Williston, Charlotte, Heinsberg, but they've added a lot of people if they come over this way.
Well,
So getting to the end here, I'd like to just spend a few more minutes talking about recent trends as far as the environment goes. So total energy usage is up in the valley. There's a slight downturn in 2023, but it was a very slight downturn. But you can't attribute it all to Sugarbush because Sugarbush Resort's annual energy usage has decreased quite significantly.
This is electricity, but
Yes, electricity.
it's not including fuels. It's just electricity.
Electricity,
Correct.
That would
so
make
what-
sense to me. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just saying, so a lot of people using more electric appliances and things like.
Air conditioning, I think it's gotten hotter. We've got
Right.
air conditioning.
Yeah.
We're not the only ones.
Change that.
Right.
to
Well, we
electricity,
got,
that's what it is.
heat
Oh,
pumps.
did I say energy?
Well,
What's that?
I've taken that note.
Is it?
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
you're
you.
up high. We're in the swamps.
So that's my apologies there. Energy is supposed to say electricity. My apologies, but thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate it.
I would expect with warmer summers that more
Yes.
people are gonna be using cooling, where in the past we didn't have to
Do that,
do that.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. As of 2020, the Friends of the Mad River for a long period of time tracked E. coli levels in the Mad River. They no longer do that, or at least they stopped doing it as of 2020. But in that time period, E. coli levels were well below the state health protective level for recreational waters. Something that I'm particularly excited about, land conservation is increasing in the Mad River Valley. So a couple of quick slides. This kind of gets at that electrical usage statement. So you'll see kilowatts per hour on the y-axis, residential use, commercial industrial use, and those two things combined, all represented. Warren is in the gold, Waitsfield is in the blue, and Fayston's in the black. And as I mentioned, between 2018 2022, total electrical energy usage increased by 19%, down 1% in 2022, 2023. Like I said, very slight downturn. Residential makes up the majority of this, so 53%, and Warren has the highest proportion of energy, electrical energy use. And like I said, Sugarbush's annual energy usage has decreased by almost 40% since 2002.
It's really aggressive.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, just the advances in snowmaking and still driving.
Yeah.
Most of that, you know.
Last slide, or second to last slide, I guess technically, looking at land conservation by type here in the valley as of 2025. You'll see that state and federal land sits at just under 70%. Municipally conserved open space sits at about 6%. Privately owned conserved land sits at just under 30%. As of 2021, 36% of Warren is conserved compared to 27% of Facein and 17% of Waitsfield. When I think about these places, I'm thinking about the Green Mountain National Forest, Campbell's Hump State Park is making up a lot of that land, and Warren and Facein, of course. I'm sure you all know that. But at the municipal level, what I think is really cool, Waitsfield has conserved nearly 800 acres, like I said, municipally, Facein and Warren less so, but again, they have larger tracts of public land at the state and federal level in those places. So very cool. This is the end. Thank you all very much for listening. I appreciate your questions throughout and happy to take more questions now if you have them.
The slide I saw that, was, I don't know if it's the most one of the most alarming, I guess, that it's, and my neighbor Macon has done a similar exercise, was looking at houses that were once permanently occupied or
Residential lots.
the residential loss slide. And it's really dramatic, and I think it's pretty frightening. And I don't know what we do about it.
Most of those are not demolished, it's houses they're turned into vacation homes, right?
Yeah, it's like like they're bought for, but we're permanent, you know, sort of like full-time residents or. And it's a pretty dramatic number. I mean,
Yeah.
Macon did this little thing where anyway, it was very similar, but
Oh, I'd love to see that.
yeah, it seems like we ought to do something to try to, I know we depend on a resort, I mean, you know, we have a vacation economy. And we've always had a large percentage of vacationers, granted. But like you're saying about drops in school population. and-
It's all part and parcel of the same issue. The very first slide,
Age.
age, you know, in 30 years, the average age has gone up 20 years.
Well, yeah.
So,
We
I mean, so it's like, it's terrible, but it's not, shouldn't be shocking that we don't have this.
Well, like the graph that I saw that Macon was showing me was like, it would be home sales in the valley. And you would have it like it popped up like a cool bubble would pop up. This was a home sale and it was Warren, they say Warren Village. Look at all the sales that were in Warren Village over time. And you know, and whether it went to a permanent resident or not. And in recent years, it's been like, wow, all these sales are going to, or not all, but so many more are going. And I just think that's really bad for our communities over the long run.
Well, there's a national stat that I think it's baby boomers are buying the most houses. Right, so of any of the generations.
Really?
Yeah, so they're
Sorry.
buying them and then, you know, there's a lot of Airbnb usage and people can't afford the down payment for houses at these prices on many jobs anymore. And so that's a big reason for the age thing too.
And we can't downsize.
Yeah.
So I sold my house in Hartford, I can't,
No.
so. Where would I move?
Right?
Well, and one of the, not on the report, page 37 has the Matter Valley percentage of vacation homes and vacant units as part of the total. From 1990, it's 1990, 2000, 2010, and 2020. And the percentage of the total housing stock that are vacation homes and vacant units has actually gone down since 1990. So
That piece is confusing me.
that's why
I thought Warren was 2/3 vacation homes.
Yeah.
But
Like-
this was recent sales were all, I mean, maybe that's a little different than the conversion. Obviously, we have
Yeah.
huge condominium complexes on the mountain in Warren that probably have been vacation stock for ever, you know, since they were built.
70s, yeah.
And no one really cared because that was ski condos.
Right.
It's more alarming when we see our village turned into vacation, you know, the same.
Right.
Sort
The,
of.
the
vacation.
context matters.
Yeah, the
Right.
context, yeah. Anyway, thank you. I thought that was very
It's
interesting.
changing the whole character of your village, for God's sake, there's people coming in now, it's just dreadful.
I don't think there are people coming. It's like, it's, yeah, no.
I just didn't climb over the damn speed bumps, right?
Yeah, yeah, well, that's true.
I had a question, how common is this kind of data gathering in communities? Are we doing more than most?
Yes. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, no, honestly, very few communities put together, very few
Right.
communities I'm aware of, put the amount of effort into this information. A lot of, you know, this is a collection of information that's US, federal, states and some local, data. And what I've seen, even going back 15 or so years ago, I remember there was like a data almanac that some students did in Middlebury. It was like a student class project. And they were really kind of like the data tools that you could find online that are kind of AI data tools that sort of you can put in and it'll give you a profile for a place. But I think that there's a difference between, I have a hard time fully absorbing that information. And I think the type of analysis and the work that we do here to dig in and understand and keep and providing context for this data, I don't know of any other places doing an effort like this. And yeah, so I think there are tools and widgets and dashboards that provide information, and we have a dashboard on our own website, which I think is really helpful. But this sort of level and depth of work is not common.
Any other questions?
Any other feedback or suggestions? Obviously, you know, one of the goals here is to move forward and do presentations in communities. Traditionally, those presentations are planning commissions and select boards. It's a great way to introduce the new community planner, to keep the Manor Valley Plain District in the front of our communities and let him know the type of work we do, as well as ensuring that data is that folks are aware of it and be there to answer questions and to challenge our assumptions and make the data collection analysis work better going forward. In previous years, it's also, in addition to municipalities, a variety of different groups that provide the data. We've reached out and done presentations. I anticipate this year to maybe not do as deep or broad of an outreach, given the transition with staff, but the municipal side, you know, I guess the question is, do you think it is valuable for your planning commissions and select boards, or maybe planning commissions or select boards, to have a presentation of some sort like this? And so that's question number one. The second is, how much time do you think is appropriate for those meetings to do that presentation? This I calculated, we end up being at like 49 minutes, which is longer than you anticipated.
Thank you for your patience.
Obviously, over time, things can go quicker, potentially, but also we don't want to stifle conversation either. So having I would imagine a smaller period of time in the like 20 to 30 minute time frame is probably the better appetite, specifically for select boards, maybe along with the planning commissions. But any feedback or other groups beyond planning commissions and select boards, from the mountain to the chamber and such, like who are the groups that you think would appreciate this type of presentation?
I'll go first and say, basic planning commission would welcome it. I know Sam did it last year, and I'll get my member roundtable out of the way right now. We're in the just beginning the formative stages of updating our town plan. The first step in updating our town plan is to get out a survey. This would be really it's all very helpful in terms of sort of targeting survey questions and big sure things. So yes, please.
I'd love to.
I think from the Warren Planning Commission perspective, we enjoy these presentations. And I think, yeah, half an hour, we tend to have more time than the select board, so a half an hour presentation.
You can have 48 minutes.
Awesome.
I can't speak for our select board, but maybe
Certainly.
Chuck and Dave can.
Yes, certainly, the rest of my members need to hear this as well, or see this as well, so. And I think that 20 to 30 minute timeframe is a good one.
Great.
Yeah, so considering you'll have more slides, but probably just
Your question.
your questions, and we can maybe like zip through things where people don't want to spend too much time on or something. I think half an hour is good
Yeah.
for the Waitsfield Select Board.
I was gonna say, I think our chamber board would be interested in it. It would be something that would be eye-opening to them to know what the Pine District does. And relatively prominent business people should be aware of it. We also spoke last year, we started talking about more of a PR campaign about this as I was
Yep.
watching this, and there were some things that really struck me. I think that there's, you could just get these little bits of information out throughout the year. Mad River Valley by the numbers and, do something out to the paper or in Front Porch Forum or whatever. Did you know, these kinds of statistics?
When's the anniversary again?
What's that?
When's the anniversary again?
Plain District?
Yeah, was that, did it already happen?
We are in our 41st year, so there's always an anniversary. of
Maybe we
some
can have a
sort.
retrospective 40th.
Yeah,
There
We
you
did
go.
that, we did a retrospective
Yeah,
for the 40th.
Well, we haven't yet, but
We talked about
Yeah,
it.
you talked about it.
we talked
Oh,
about
wow,
That's what I
I
was,
feel like we did it.
I like retrospective 40th.
and it was longer ago than I remember, so.
I think 41st is better, no celebrates 41.
Yeah, exactly.
We're unique.
Right?
I remember as a family, we missed the 4th of July party, so we had like a July 7th party or something, so yes, you can.
Now you get Christmas cards out, so they're like St.
Right.
Patrick's Day cards.
Just
Josh, what about, oh, I'm sorry.
No, but you got.
What about Mad River TV, doing a full presentation that could be then put on Mad River TV, so anybody who wants to look at it.
Or a church thing and invite the whole valley and stream it.
Yeah. Right. Yes, great. Anything else?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at the clock and I know we have other agenda items, so. But finish
I'll
your.
bother you
thought.
later. No, it's fine.
Okay,
Thank you for keeping us going.
okay. With that, thank you, Franny. And thank you, Joshua. Why don't we
Yes.
move to B in the new business, which is the HRA resolution? Can you give us a little background on this? It looked like
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll provide a little overview and then lean on Jonathan to maybe explain a few things. So the Plain District uses MVP for our healthcare. We have an HRA plan that started January 1st. And the full plan document, which is included in the additional documents as part of this meeting and on our website. One of the requirements this year that hasn't been a requirement in previous years is a certificate of resolution, certifying that the governing body of the planning district adopts this resolution. And there's sort of three pieces to that particular resolution. I don't know if Jonathan, if you were prepared or planning on talking about those elements.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, it's a pretty standard sort of governing board approval resolution, just to ensure, for the sake of the insurance company, that that the company is actually, empowered to enter into this contract. It's very sort of boilerplate. If this were a banking resolution, I would have no qualms about just signing it on the general authority to do banking. But since we don't really have a general authority to transact insurance, I think it's worth just going through and having the board actually, make these resolutions. And all they really say is that, and this was actually, it's on the website. It's included in, not in the packing materials, but it's under other documents for today's meeting. So all of this was circulated in advance, which is great. And it's, if you wanted to take a look at it, it's page 21 of the linked document for the HRA. And And it lists out, as Josh said, 3 resolutions. It just says that the form of amended and restated welfare benefit plan is going to be adopted. It says that the administrator, who is, I believe, how do they define the administrator in here? Hold on one second. Yeah, I think it's just whoever the employer deems, and so it's basically the employer, meaning all of us on the steering committee. Apologies there. So it just says that the administrator is allowed to take action that we deem necessary to implement the plan, set up accounting administrative procedures, basically what Josh has already done and been doing, and also that the proper agents of the employer can act as soon as possible to notify employees of the plan. Both of our employees are present currently, and make sure that everyone gets a copy of it. Essentially, all this is saying is that, you know, the steering committee and the district generally are going to do what they're obligated to do as, you know, members of this insurance plan, and provide the beneficiaries of the plan with all the legally required materials. So from my perspective, there's nothing in here that isn't already incumbent on the entity to do anyway. Nothing that we haven't already committed ourselves to do by virtue of engaging the MVP plan. And I'm not entirely certain why they've added this new certificate for this year that wasn't previously present, but it doesn't actually add anything new that we haven't already committed to as an organization. So yeah, I see no concerns with this. My general practice on these would be to just say that to propose a resolution, you know, that we adopt.
Would you propose? Yeah, please propose a resolution.
Yeah, so rather than, I mean, I'm happy to read out the verbatim language that was circulated earlier if folks would like to hear it. I'm also, yeah.
If you have a simpler form of resolution, we'll take it.
Well, what I would suggest is that I propose a resolution that we adopt the verbatim language in this certificate of resolution on page 21 of the circulated HRA document, as it is required that we adopt these specific resolutions. I just don't know that we need to read those resolutions into the record when they've already been circulated. And it's just sort of a lot of language that we'd be reading out, and, you know, it's very legalese. So any questions?
And that,
Okay, is there any discussion before we vote?
no.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Joshua.
I bet the form is because there was some lawsuit because someone wasn't properly authorized to.
Oh, blame the lawyer. What a bad
Yep.
lawyer. Dave, by the way, is also.
They're very, they don't like
Yes.
that. Like rogue agents.
Okay, so that was A, B, and C brings us to, you know, a topic, a sad topic, and Joshua has agreed to share some thoughts.
Yeah, so Margot Wade passed away just shy of a month ago. Jim Westhill from Sugarbush provided an update to the steering committee at our meeting last month, and she passed away a couple days after that. I just wanted to take the opportunity to make a quick acknowledgement of Margot for the role personally, but I think as a broader community that she played in this community. She had a long history in Warren, and Sugarbush in the Mad River Valley. She moved forward a whole host of community and environmental initiatives as both an employee of the town of Warren, prior to being an employee of Sugarbush Resort, so employee of the town in the planning office, to Sugarbush Resort, as well as a primo volunteer, in addition to those roles. She was a member of the Green Mountain Transit Board, which was really key in support of the MAD bus and transportation more broadly. She was a member of the Mad River Resource Management Alliance, The Eaton Parcel Trails in Warren, she was a key piece of that work, which in an interpretive trail at Brooksfield. The Matter Valley Bear Initiative, the Ridge River Task Force, she was a Justice of the Peace. And like the list goes on. Those are the few, like off the top of my head, that I can think of. But I know there's a much longer list. But she was really a steadfast collaborator and communicator on projects that make this Matter Valley community a better place. And from housing, stream restoration to transit, so many different things in this community have her fingerprints all over it. And 14 years she served as a representative from Sugarbush to this group, the Matter Valley Plan District Steering Committee. Personally, I found her to be a mentor, an advocate, a friend. And our family, my family, were the first family in Waitsfield in 2021 to have COVID. January 2021, we shut down the Waitsfield Elementary School as a result of that in those early days of somebody having COVID, and there were a lot of precaution. And we received an outpouring of support from this community in so many different ways. But the number one advocate, the number one support was Margot. And that's who she was. And she was also a person that would never take any credit for any of the things she did. So that's why I think it's absolutely imperative to publicly and outwardly recognize the role and the impact that she's had on so many different people. And so she's a shining example of what it means to be an active and engaged community member, and was always focusing on others. She leaves behind her husband Jeff, her sons Jackson and Ross, who live here. I put together a really simple card of condolence to Jeff, Ross, and Jackson, and I invite you to sign at the end of the meeting. And if folks are able to sign today, I can get it in the mail pretty soon. But I wasn't looking for an official motion. I just wanted to acknowledge the impact and the role that she's had in her community, and the loss is quite profound.
Thank you, Joshua. Yeah, she's a huge impact in Warren. Yes, so thank you very much. I don't know if anyone else.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying something, Josh. That one hit me really hard, and I've known her for almost 40 years, and she was living here. I mean, when I first moved here, we were pretty close. Yeah, I remember her from Mad River long before Sugarbush. And I mean, I'm just thinking about like how helpful she was to me in the last year. I mean, that woman called me every week, and I feel, it was really tough to lose her. And knowing like what I was going through, and she's like dying, and she was like worried about me. So yeah, that sucks. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
And I do think at some point I was thinking about talking to Jeff and maybe doing something nice somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere out.
Right.
Far away, where no one, I think maybe a nice spot to
Mhm.
a bench or something, but
Yeah,
I was thinking we should somehow do something like that.
that's a great idea.
So, yeah.
I'm happy to talk more about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Okay, we'll all miss Margot terribly. Yeah, anyway. Thank you, Joshua. And the next item is the member roundtable. Jonathan, do you want to go first?
Sorry, was that me?
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
It's I only ask because it's hard for me to see who you're looking at on the owl.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at you.
I actually unfortunately don't have a lot to report due to my
Can you do a live Simba?
I don't. She's asleep, and I will catch a lot of hell if I try to wake her up. But let me quickly see if I have a picture on hand.
Smart man.
But no, all good. We did have a baby, Larissa and I. So Felicity is doing well, as is Larissa. And I'm just trying to see if I have a picture with the baby's face in it, because all the pictures I'm looking at right now are her looking away, and that's not going to be what anyone wants. Um, but yes, everyone's healthy and happy. Unfortunately, I have missed most of my meetings for the last few weeks because of that. So I was not present at the last planning commission meeting, and we canceled our second one for the month due to just the number of people who were not able to make it. So we will not have another meeting until after the town meeting. But work continues obviously on a number of fronts. Probably the biggest at the moment is sort of reformulating a task force to evaluate options coming out of the master planning process. And so we're working towards building some kind of group to analyze a couple of different opportunities that we've identified in that. We have some pretty good buy-in on one new such committee. And, due to my incredible lack of sleep, maybe struggling to remember what exactly that is in support of. But we are, as I said, we're continuing to work towards creating the environment that we need to get work done in the Irisville area. The second piece that has been pretty active lately is STR. Our select board has asked us to put together proposed language for an STR ordinance, and so we're working on that pretty actively. We have a subcommittee that is working towards a draft there, so that should be coming together fairly shortly. And then we have sort of just ongoing ordinary business. Some minor revisions to the bylaws are under review. We've been receiving some outreach from the community on proposed modifications to our bylaws around use of properties that are in the ag-res district. Specifically, we've had a few incidents in the last few years of folks wanting to run organizations that are similar in sort of nature to schools or outdoor retreat centers, something that the Waitsfield zoning bylaws don't permit. And so we've been sort of investigating what it would take to address that concern. And so I know that's something that has come up to our attention from the community a few times recently, and we are trying to be, responsive with the caveat that we do not engage in spot zoning. And so it really is, at the moment, it is a process of understanding what the scope of the concern is and what the sort of most appropriate scope of response would be, given the community concern. So that's sort of the other thing that's hot on my desk at the moment. So yeah, with that, I'm going to see if I can just pull up quickly. I have a photo here of my wife and I. If I can get my computer to work. Here we go. This is our baby. Let's just share my screen quickly. This Felicity.
Oh,
So she's growing quickly. She hit 8 pounds today. So
hair, the hair.
she does have a lot of hair. She came out with more hair than you might expect. So she's very cute. She doesn't sleep a lot, so neither do I.
We'll get there.
Congrats.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Dave, can we go to you?
Sure, stay in Waitsfield. Yeah, the biggest thing was, I was gonna talk about the infrastructure summit, and I hope any of you go to watch it on MRV TV. We'll try to add a link. We have a local option tax page that we've set up on our on the Waitsfield website, where we're gonna put we have put the PowerPoint presentation that we went through, and we will put the link. Because, and then reacting to this data presentation tonight, so many of these moving parts just seem so urgent with that age graph and the home price graph and the we went through the wastewater project tonight, and there's been so much work done, and I'm just, we've been working really hard to try and get the word out about the local option tax as a way to be able to make this happen with the changes in the federal funding structure that we were hoping for. And we had an update on the village covered bridge that it is not great shape. So we will have to replace the rotten timbers this summer, and probably close it for some amount of time. And that, so we have kind of issues with all three bridges right now, and the town garage RFP coming out. So we are hoping, for voter support to help us get through this next however many years of increased expenses, and to try and at the same time help mitigate some of these issues that we're seeing in this report, and try to get some more housing for young families. And I think short-term rentals regulation starting in Waitsfield is an important part of that as well. So I just wanted to shout out Jonathan for doing that, because when this new housing, hopefully that is built, hopefully it does come online, we'll want to make sure it's going to young families as much as possible. So that's it for me. So
Thank you, Dave. BQ,
yes,
do you
local option tax.
have, do you have anything to add to your earlier comment?
No.
Thank you.
Moving right along.
Yeah.
I'll try to be brief too. So we've been spending a lot of time, as most of the select boards have been, on preparing for town meeting, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. I mentioned a couple of those major culverts that we had, that we're working on. The proposal should be going, or the RFP should be going out within the next week or so. We've got all of the permissions back from the abutters that we can go ahead with the constructions there. So that was on Center Facing Road, and then up on Sharpshooter Road, which was going back to floods 2 years ago, but we're still dealing with all of that now. And that leads me to something that was in the Valley Reporter today about our budget going up 16% from last year to this year. It is, but it's deceiving, because a lot of those numbers are the way that we have to use the FEMA money that's coming in and going out. So our actual ask of the town for total tax money that we will need to cover all of our other expenses is 0.02% increase. So I think that's a more important number than the 16% number that you're looking at, which is really deceiving. So anyway, that's all I have to share with y'all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Joel?
First, just thank you again, Josh, for the words about Margot. Really appreciated. It's been a tough month for all of us at Sugarbush. We're having a great season at Sugarbush though. Snow is great. A couple project updates, golf course, clubhouse. We went to the Warren DRB last night for the temporary clubhouse build. So for conditional use zoning for the temporary clubhouse. So the plan is to have, that go in kind of across the road from the old clubhouse for the next 2 summers. Then we'll also begin permitting the permanent clubhouse in the next couple months, working with architects currently on initial design. So more to come there, but just getting through the temporary clubhouse permitting, Act 250 applications under review. We've got wastewater and stormwater under review. So
And that's
lots
for
of
the
permits.
and that's for the temporary?
That's all just for the temporary. So like.
Does make you think.
Over $10,000 in permit fees just for the temporary clubhouse, but.
What's the temporary clubhouse gonna consist of?
So it'll house both.
Ask me for somebody else.
Yeah, the pro shop
Food.
and food and beverage.
Trailer though, I mean, like what sort of?
Yeah, bringing in modular build, 1-story, kind of 2 trailer like, but it's coming in cubes, so it's easier to transport. And then a deck. So next to the across the cart path, north of the cart path from the first tee box. So get us through the next 2 summers, but we'll be eager to bring it down so that we have the good view of the mountain from the new clubhouse. So want to keep that moving as much as we can. And then also we'll be submitting permits for Northridge lift replacement soon, like Act 250, hopefully in the next couple weeks. And then will be coming to the town of Facein as well. That would be construction next for 2027, so not this year, but just getting all the permits in place so we can get the capital from Alterra to fund the lift replacement for next year. So those are kind of the big ones.
No.
Yeah, those are the big projects, and yeah, I mean, skier visits are looking good for this year. We're anticipating a big weekend, snow coming in Friday night, should be a busy weekend, and yeah, shaping up. I mean, the East is faring quite well. Unfortunately, our counterparts in the West are having a pretty dismal season, so the East is holding the line for the rest of North America, even though we make up a small portion. So yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you, Joel. Eric?
Yeah, I'm shedding crocodile tears.
I
know. Yeah, I've been on the other end of that. So, yeah, business is good. It has really brought up the fact about the seasonality of this place. If you talk to some of our hospitality people, who are the lowest paid people here, they're running, it's ragged, and the getting jerked around from busy to not busy is really tough on businesses, but it's good that we're busy these days, which is nice. Had a really interesting visit at the State House last week. I went to Outdoor Recreation Day there, which was interesting. There were a lot of good Valley representation there. Misha was there talking about the path, and that was really worthwhile. And what else is going on? Doing a lot of planning, and I think, the other thing is we're getting really good press on our map. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
Which is just, it all goes, it's amazing. We have this relief map. If you've been down to the Welcome Center, it's really cool the way that thing the story has taken off, and now we're getting, and we had no idea where that thing came from. And now we have a very good history of it, and it actually got Dave, the artist, back into the place, and he's gonna actually finish it. I was actually in there working on it today, so it's only been 4 years, but it's exciting, and those little community things are more valuable than you really realize. So that we owe that to you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So
Yeah, you should read the art. Maybe we can share it out to the full steering committee, the article
Yeah.
that was written recently.
Yeah, right.
Telling that the story of this relief map, and the very first picture that I ever took with my iPhone happened to be that it was both that relief map in the corner plus
when you visited with me,
no.
Oh,
Years
before.
prior, Barry Simpson is the person who said, "Hey, Josh, you should come down here and take a look at this thing I have." And then it was actually this giant, I think it was a 41 or 38 star flag
right?
that they
Yeah.
found in the roof of the town hall. When they were doing renovations, and this incredible flag from a particular time period. And while we were there, and he wanted to show that to me, I took a picture of it in my very first iPhone. And the other thing on that roll in this corner was this map, and this
4 foot by 8 foot.
relief map that was handmade, showing the Matter Valley, and that is now it has been essentially adapted and evolved, and is a showcase in the visitor center. So.
Awesome.
Very cool. To finish up, is that it?
I'm done.
You're done. So Warren PC, we were hoping the select board would vote out the looters. But I think they were not comfortable with the way they had warned it. They hadn't warned a vote. So although no members of the public were there, I think they've delayed the looters by 1 meeting. But we're hoping that the looters will finally get passed. Our land use and development regs. We'll have significant turnover on the Warren PC. Three members, including myself, are leaving. And there's, this, like in the last month, an interesting opportunity for potentially for an affordable housing project I'm trying to sell to our select board has come up at I think people will be excited. It's with Habitat with Humanity has expressed some interest, and I've talked to some folks on the select board and they're interested, and if we want to do affordable housing, we got to partner with someone who knows what they're doing, because we don't have the capacity to do it in town. I mean, we just, without, unless you hire experts, you know, we just, it's too much. And I know the state, you know, with Chip and with,
Yeah.
that's not gonna, you know, you need more hands-on, I believe, if you want to get these
You
things.
go to a training this
I
weekend.
went to a training today on Chip.
No,
And I
no,
still don't, and I
small
still,
developer thing looks pretty cool, actually.
the what
It's a
does?
small developers.
It's a small developer May, Saturday, if you want to spend all day there.
Yeah.
That's- You can,
I
are you
can't,
gonna do
I
it?
can unfortunately.
Yeah. exactly. So, and then we're just gonna start it, and then the new planning commission will start its, you know, the next cycle of town plan. And that's all I've got, and I'm sorry when we haven't past 9 o'clock again, folks. Boy, I'm losing my touch. Anyway, it's good. You'll.
I'm sorry about that.
No, I take responsibility.
I will say, we started at 7:06 and it is now 9:06, so.
Okay, all right, so I would entertain a motion to
There you
adjourn.
go.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion,
Second that.
second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
The next meeting is March 19th, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much all, and Franny, welcome,
Thank you.
belated welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Happy.